Ava flinched as a blood-curdling scream pierced the humid morning air. She turned instinctively, heart pounding, as commuters froze mid-step on the sidewalk. Across the intersection, a frail homeless man collapsed to his knees, clutching a weathered leather notebook to his chest. "She has to know," he wailed, voice cracking. The traffic light blinked red while horns blared. Ava's breath caught. Something in the man's face was eerily familiar. She stood motionless, haunted by a sensation she couldn't name. His eyes locked onto hers through the chaos. Time slowed. "Ava!" he shouted. The name hit her like a thunderclap. She had never seen this man before in her life, had she? Panic surged through her veins as people rushed around him. She wanted to move toward him, but her legs didn't respond. A security guard dragged the man to the curb. The notebook slipped from his grasp and landed on the pavement, just a few feet from Ava. She didn't move. She couldn't. The sirens were faint but approaching. Ava finally stepped forward, drawn by the strange gravity of the moment. Her eyes remained locked on the notebook. It looked ancient, edges frayed, leather cover cracked like desert earth. "Ma'am, please step back," the guard barked. Ava didn't hear him. Her pulse roared in her ears. She crouched slowly, fingers brushing the damp leather. Her name was scrawled on the cover, Ava, in block letters. Her throat tightened. The man was being pulled to his feet now, screaming hoarsely. "She needs to read it. Tell her what they did." Ava clutched the book to her chest. Her legs trembled. The guard narrowed his eyes. "Do you know him?" he asked. Ava opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. The homeless man's cries grew distant as he was shoved into the back of a patrol car. Ava remained there, frozen on the curb, a storm erupting silently inside her. She sat at her desk hours later, the notebook untouched beside her. The city noise outside filtered through the cracked window. Ava stared blankly at a half-filled case report on her laptop. But her mind was back at that intersection. That voice. Her name. That look. Every instinct screamed that today's encounter wasn't random. She picked up the notebook, its cover cool and strangely comforting. Slowly, she opened it. The first page was filled with messy handwriting and yellowed newspaper clippings glued in crooked rows. A headline read, "Councilman's aide disappears amid scandal." Below, in red ink, "They buried it all." Her stomach dropped. She flipped to the next page. A photo was stapled in, blurry, old, and torn. The man in it looked much younger but unmistakable. It was him. The man from the street. And standing beside him, her mother. Her fingers trembled as she traced the image. Her mother had died when Ava was 10. She remembered her soft voice, the songs at bedtime, but this was a side of her life that had never been spoken of. She grabbed her phone, heart racing. "Lena," Ava said when her friend picked up. "I need you to come over. It's urgent." The silence on the other end was brief but telling. "It's about that man from the street, isn't it?" Lena's voice was quiet, knowing. Ava stiffened. "Wait. How do you?" But Lena had already hung up. Ava stared at the phone. Confusion swirled into dread. How could Lena know anything about this? She looked back at the notebook, then at the photo again. The man's arm was around her mother. His face younger, but there was warmth there. Trust. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone who had once mattered. The doorbell rang 10 minutes later. Ava opened it to find Lena standing there, arms crossed, her face tight with emotion. "You should have left it alone," Lena said quietly as she walked past Ava into the apartment. Ava followed, anger bubbling beneath her confusion. "You knew him, didn't you?" she asked. Lena didn't answer. Instead, she stood by the window, looking out at the city as if it might offer a distraction. "Tell me the truth, Lena," Ava said, stepping closer. "Who is he? Why did he know my name?" Lena turned, tears welling in her eyes. "Because he's not just some man on the street, Ava. He's someone they tried to erase. Someone they made us forget. Ava's breath caught in her throat. You mean? Yes, Lena whispered. That man might be your father. Ava sat across from Lena at her kitchen table, the air between them thick with silence. A steaming mug of untouched tea cooled beside her. Why didn't you ever tell me? Ava asked, voice hoarse. Lena folded her hands tightly. Because I promised your mother, she replied. She made me swear to keep you away from that part of her life. Ava's chest tightened. You let me grow up without knowing who I am. Lena's eyes filled with regret. Your mother wanted to protect you. He was dangerous, Ava. Or, that's what we were told. Ava shook her head slowly. You think he's dangerous now? Lena hesitated. I don't know anymore. But if he really is your father, then you deserve answers. Just be careful. There are things in that notebook people buried for a reason. Ava looked down at it again, the cover like a locked door. For the first time she wanted to knock. Later that night, Ava lay on her bed, the notebook open beside her. Its pages were a storm of clippings, scribbled timelines, and coded notes. One document stood out, a birth certificate with her name, but a father's name redacted. It's like someone tried to erase him, she murmured aloud. She flipped to a letter, yellowed and fragile. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakable. If you're reading this, then they failed to silence me. Ava read every word, her breath quickening. The letter spoke of blackmail, political betrayal, and an insider operation meant to remove dissenters. Her mother's name appeared again and again. And always, the baby must never know. Ava's hands trembled. I was the baby, she whispered. Her whole identity had been built on lies. The homeless man wasn't just a relic of the past. He was her past. The next morning, Ava found herself walking the same path she always took to work, but everything felt different now. She passed the corner where she'd first seen him. The sidewalk was quiet, the air still. A single paper coffee cup rolled gently in the breeze. Her steps slowed. She looked around as if he might appear again, like a ghost summoned by her thoughts. Who are you? She muttered under her breath. A woman nearby watched her, then leaned in. He used to talk about you, she said, startling Ava. Said you'd come one day. Ava turned to her sharply. You knew him? The woman nodded. Most thought he was crazy. But he always had that notebook. Said it had everything. Secrets people would kill to keep hidden. Ava's pulse surged. Did he ever say his name? The woman hesitated. Only once. He said it like it burned. Jonas Mendez. Ava's heart stopped. That name haunted Ava the rest of the day. Jonas Mendez. She barely made it through work, mind spiraling with theories. At lunch, she searched old news archives from the early 90s. There it was, Jonas Mendez, chief aide to Councilman Reese Carter, disappears after whistleblower allegations. She clicked deeper. Reports were vague. No foul play officially recorded. Just a disappearance. Then silence. Another article included a photograph of Jonas. Younger, confident, in a crisp suit. Same jawline. Same eyes. A resemblance to her she could no longer deny. Ava leaned back in her chair, reeling. If this was true, then her life had been carved from a lie. Why hadn't anyone told her? Who had the power to erase a man like that? And more importantly, why? That evening, Ava visited her mother's old friend, Mrs. Ramirez, a quiet woman who used to babysit her. The moment Ava mentioned Jonas, the woman grew tense. You shouldn't be asking about him, she said sharply. That story is dangerous. Ava pressed on. Please. I need to know who he was to my mom, to me. Mrs. Ramirez's eyes darted around, as if the shadows themselves were listening. He was brave, too brave, she whispered. They called him a traitor, but all he did was tell the truth. Your mother loved him once, deeply. Ava's breath caught. Was he my father? Mrs. Ramirez didn't answer. Instead, she reached into a drawer, and pulled out an old envelope. Your mother left this with me, said to give it to you, if you ever asked about Jonas. Ava took it with trembling hands, the weight of the past nearly crushing her. Ava sat alone in her living room, the envelope from Mrs. Ramirez resting in her lap like a live wire. With a breath held too long, she opened it. Inside were photographs, aged and faded. One showed her mother and Jonas, younger and smiling, standing in front of a government building. Another was of a crib, her crib. Beneath it, a note. Keep her safe. Keep her away. Tears welled in Ava's eyes. Alongside the photos was a letter, written by her mother. If you're reading this, it began, then you've met the man they turned into a ghost. Her mother explained everything. How Jonas tried to expose corruption. How powerful people buried him alive with lies. He loved you. He never stopped watching over you. Ava pressed the letter to her chest. All the years of doubt, of feeling unseen, suddenly made sense. The man on the corner hadn't been lost. He had been waiting. The next day, Ava walked into the city records office, determined. The receptionist glanced up as she approached. Public documents? Ava nodded. Anything on Jonas Mendez, from 1993. The woman typed, frowning. We don't have much. He's redacted in most places. Ava's brow furrowed. He worked for Councilman Reese Carter, right? The woman hesitated, then whispered, Don't say his name too loud. Ava leaned in. Why? The receptionist checked over her shoulder. Carter's still in office, and still dangerous. People who dig into that name, they disappear. Ava's stomach twisted. She jotted down what little the woman gave her. Dates, an address, a list of missing documents. Then she slipped the paper into her pocket. It wasn't much, but it was a thread. And Ava had every intention of pulling it until the entire web unraveled. That evening, Ava stood outside a crumbling building in an old district, one of the addresses from the list. The sun was sinking fast, painting the city in rust and shadow. The place was abandoned, boarded up windows and a rusted fence. She ducked under the loose gate and entered. The air was stale, thick with dust. In the back room, she found an old desk, rotted and sagging. Inside a drawer, more files. Most were ruined, but one folder had survived. She pulled it free and opened it. Photos. Receipts. Transcripts of wiretapped calls. Names, Carter, Mendez, 2 judges, a journalist. One page had Jonas's name circled in red, next to the words, security threat. Eliminate quietly. Ava's blood went cold. This wasn't just politics. This was conspiracy. And Jonas hadn't disappeared. He'd been hunted. Ava sat in her car outside the city archives, the folder on the passenger seat beside her. She stared out at the skyline, mind racing. Every piece fit together like a puzzle, assembled in reverse. Jonas was silenced, her mother threatened, the truth buried in layers of fear. But now, she had the evidence. And if something happened to her, others would know. She grabbed her phone, recorded a voice memo. If you're hearing this, something went wrong. Jonas Mendez was framed. I have documents. I'm going public. Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. She sent it to 3 trusted contacts. Then she took a deep breath and picked up the folder again. The next step would be dangerous. But silence had already cost her family everything. She wouldn't let it happen again. The next morning, Ava walked into a small independent newsroom, one her mother used to read daily. The editor, an older man with skeptical eyes, looked up as she entered. Can I help you? She dropped the folder on his desk. I think you'll want to see this. He opened it slowly, flipping through the pages, his expression changing from boredom to disbelief. Where did you get this? He asked. From my father, Ava said. He tried to bring this to light 30 years ago. They buried him for it. The editor stood, suddenly alert. If this is real, we can't sit on it. Ava nodded. I don't want credit. I want truth. Expose them. He extended his hand. Then, let's burn them to the ground. As she shook it, Ava felt it. A shift. The story was no longer hidden. And this time, they wouldn't bury it. Ava sat at her apartment desk, the glow of her laptop casting sharp angles across her face. The article was going live in the morning. The editor had promised front-page placement. But now, a new fear crept in. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A low voice spoke. "Stop now, Ms. Mendez, or you'll regret it." Her stomach dropped. "Who is this?" Silence. Then, a click. The line went dead. She stared at the screen, heart racing. This wasn't just old news. They were still watching. She rushed to the window, yanking back the curtain. A black SUV idled across the street. Her mind raced. She turned back to the table and opened the notebook again. Near the back, written in shaky script, "If you feel eyes on you, you're getting close." Ava backed away slowly. It was all real. Every word. And someone wanted it buried. Still. Ava didn't sleep. By dawn, she was knocking on Lena's door, the notebook clutched tightly in her hands. Lena opened it, eyes red with worry. "They called me," Ava said. "They threatened me." Lena ushered her inside, locking the door behind them. "You should have left it alone," she whispered. Ava turned on her. "You knew they'd come for me?" Lena looked away. "I didn't think they still watched. Not after all these years." Ava stared, betrayed. "Why did my mother trust you? Why did I?" Lena stepped closer, voice trembling. "Because I was trying to protect you. We all were. Your mom made choices that put you in danger, Jonas too. I thought silence was the safest path." Ava gritted her teeth. "Silence, let them win." She turned toward the door. "Not anymore." Lena reached out. "Ava." But Ava didn't stop. The truth was already in motion. Later that morning, Ava stood across from the towering City Hall building, the heart of political power and corruption. Protesters gathered nearby for an unrelated issue, their chants echoing off stone. She blended in among them, her gaze fixed on the entrance. This was Carter's fortress. The man who'd ordered Jonas' arrest, who'd kept Ava's past hidden under layers of bureaucracy and fear. Ava tightened her grip on a flash drive in her coat pocket. It held scanned copies of every document. The story was out now, but Carter still sat on a throne of lies. A woman approached Ava quietly. "They won't let you get close," she warned. Ava didn't flinch. "I don't need to get close," she replied. "I just need him to know I'm here." Across the plaza, Carter exited the building, flanked by security. For the first time he saw her, and stopped walking. Their eyes met across the plaza, Ava and Carter. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, followed by something colder, calculation. He turned toward his security and whispered something. They moved toward her. Ava stood her ground. "Jonas Mendez," she said loudly, voice clear above the noise. Carter paused. Whispers spread through the crowd. "He was my father, and you buried him." Gasps rippled. The security detail hesitated. Cameras turned. Reporters who had ignored her now pointed mics her way. "Understand?" Ava pulled out the flash drive. "I have everything. The truth's already out." Carter's mask cracked, fury creeping into his features. But it was too late. The press had him in their sights. Ava walked away, heart pounding. For the first time, Carter looked exposed, not powerful, not untouchable, just a man cornered by truth. That night, the story broke. The headline spread like wildfire. Whistleblower's daughter exposes decades-old political conspiracy. News anchors dissected the evidence. Photos of Jonas, young and in rags, flashed across screens. Ava sat in silence, wrapped in a blanket, eyes locked on the TV. Lena sat beside her, tearful. "You did it," she whispered. Ava shook her head. He did. I just finished what they tried to silence. Footage played of Carter being ushered away by officials. Investigations had begun. Ava leaned back, exhausted but awake in a way she'd never been. The ghost on the corner was no longer a ghost. He was a father, a truth-teller, a survivor. And now, so was she. Ava stood outside the courthouse, gripping the railing with white knuckles. Reporters hovered like vultures, waiting for a soundbite. Behind her, Lena stood silently, offering quiet support. Inside, the grand jury deliberated. The documents had been authenticated, and witnesses had come forward, including a retired city clerk who'd confirmed Jonas' voice on suppressed tapes. Ava closed her eyes. For years she had believed she was abandoned. Now, she knew better. Her father hadn't left, he had been silenced to protect her. Lena placed a hand on her shoulder. He would be proud of you, she said gently. Ava nodded, voice tight. I just want the truth to matter. A bell chimed from inside the courthouse. The verdict was coming. She inhaled sharply, willing herself to stay strong. No matter the outcome, she had reclaimed her name. And his. Inside the courtroom, Ava sat behind the prosecution's bench, her eyes fixed on Councilman Carter. He looked smaller now, stripped of his podium and power. As the jury foreman stood, the room fell into silence. On the count of obstruction of justice, guilty. Ava didn't move. On the count of conspiracy, guilty. She exhaled, trembling. Carter's jaw tightened, but he didn't look her way. The gavel fell. Murmurs broke out, but to Ava, everything was hushed, like the world was taking a breath for the first time in decades. Jonas Mendez had been vindicated. A weight she didn't know she carried finally lifted. Lena gripped her hand. Ava whispered, "We did it." Her eyes welled up, not in grief, but in justice finally served. The courtroom blurred, but her purpose had never been clearer. The following day, Ava stood at the corner where it all began. The sidewalk was empty now. No Jonas, no crowd, no chaos. Just quiet. She carried a framed photo in her hand, the one of her mother and Jonas, smiling in better times. She knelt by the lamppost where he used to sit and gently leaned the photo against it. Beside it she placed the notebook, now scanned, recorded, immortalized in public archives. "You were never invisible," she whispered. "Not to me." A breeze lifted her curls, brushing the scent of the city through the air. Passers-by walked around her, oblivious to the tribute. But Ava didn't mind. She had nothing left to prove. She had given him his name back. And in doing so, she had found her own. Back at her apartment, Ava sat in front of her laptop, opening a blank document. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't searching for answers. She was ready to tell the story. She began typing. He stood at the same corner every day, and no one knew who he was until now. Each keystroke felt like a stitch mending the torn fabric of her life. She smiled faintly. She wasn't just her father's daughter. She was her mother's too. A woman who had protected her at great cost. Ava paused, staring at the blinking cursor. Then she typed the headline, "The Man They Erased." This wasn't just closure. It was a beginning. One where silence was no longer her inheritance, but truth was her legacy. She hit save, her hand steady for the first time in years. Later that night, Ava visited a small community center near her neighborhood, the same one her mother once worked in. A mural had just been unveiled, painted by local artists. It showed Jonas, not as a homeless man, but as he once was, strong, determined, arm raised in protest, standing beside a younger version of Ava and her mother. The plaque read, "Jonas Mendez, truth-teller, father, fighter." Ava stood quietly, tears tracing her cheeks. Around her, neighbors watched respectfully. Some clapped. A few bowed their heads. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. His legacy was no longer scribbled in the margins of an old notebook. It was here, on brick and mortar. She reached out, touching the painted hand of the man who had waited a lifetime for justice. You were never lost, she whispered. You were always leading me home. Ava stood at the podium of a small press conference organized by the independent newsroom. The journalists weren't mainstream, but they were fearless, and that was enough. She took a deep breath, clutching her notes. Cameras clicked. My name is Ava Mende, she said clearly, her voice steady. I'm the daughter of Jonas Mendez, a man this city tried to forget. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. She continued, but silence doesn't protect justice, it only delays it. Her fingers gripped the wood of the lectern. Everything I've shared today is true, and I won't stop until this story lives beyond me. She looked toward the back of the room where Lena stood, tears in her eyes. Ava wasn't just speaking for Jonas now. She was speaking for every voice that had ever been buried. And the world was finally listening. After the conference, Ava walked alone through the city. The streets felt different now, lighter, clearer, as if the very air carried fewer lies. People passed her, unaware of the war she had just waged. At a crosswalk, an older man nodded at her. You're the one from the news, right? He asked. Ava nodded quietly. Your father. He was right to speak out. Ava's eyes widened. You knew him. The man smiled faintly. Worked the same building. Heard things. We all did. He stepped away before she could ask more. But it was enough. Proof that Jonas hadn't just shouted into the void. He'd been heard. And maybe now, with the truth finally unchained, others would speak up too. Ava turned toward the skyline. The city hadn't changed. But she had. And she was no longer afraid of what it held. Later that day, Ava visited her mother's grave. It sat on a hill just beyond the city, the headstone simple and weather-worn. She knelt, brushing away dried leaves. I used to think you kept secrets because you didn't trust me, she whispered. But now I know, it was because you loved me. She placed a small flower beside the marker, then pulled out a folded copy of the front-page article. The man they erased. She laid it gently across the stone. I told his story, and yours. The wind picked up softly, rustling trees above. Ava looked toward the horizon. I hope you're both free now, she said. Because I am. A quiet peace settled over her. The dead no longer needed silence. They needed remembrance. And Ava had finally given that to them. Back at home, Ava sat at her desk reviewing emails. One subject line stood out, Whistleblower Family Fund Proposal. It was from a non-profit offering to start a scholarship in Jonas' name. She blinked, rereading it. Her father's name. On a program meant to protect future truth-tellers. She clicked reply. Her fingers hovered over the keys before she typed. Nice. Let's make it permanent. Her chest swelled. For so long, Jonas had been nothing but a shadow in her story. Now, he was part of a legacy. A blueprint for courage. She stood and walked to her window. Below, the street bustled with life, unbothered. But in Ava's eyes, every corner held weight. Especially one. She smiled faintly. They hadn't just tried to erase a man. They'd tried to erase a bloodline. And they had failed. That night, Ava opened the notebook one last time. Its pages, once heavy with mystery, now felt light, like closure. She turned to the final blank page. Slowly, she picked up a pen. In careful handwriting she wrote, Jonas Mendez, my father. Silenced but not forgotten. This story is now mine to carry forward. She closed the notebook, kissed the cover, and placed it gently inside a fireproof box beside her journal. Not to hide it, but to preserve it. The light clicked off. She crawled into bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, sleep came easily. Not haunted by questions, but calmed by answers. Outside, the city pulsed on, unaware that one of its ghosts had finally come to rest. And somewhere within it, a daughter had finally come home to herself. The morning sun crept across Ave's apartment walls, filling the space with soft gold. She stood by the window sipping her coffee, wrapped in quiet. The news cycle had moved on. The scandal was yesterday's headline. But to her, the story would never be over. It was legacy now. She turned toward a shelf lined with new photographs. Her mother, a smiling young Jonas, the mural unveiling. Between them sat the notebook, now encased in a glass display. Ava touched the edge of the shelf lightly. It wasn't just about closure anymore. It was about continuation. A knock came at the door. A young intern from the newsroom stood there holding a folder. "They want you to mentor new writers," she said with a hopeful smile. Ava took the folder. "Let's tell the right stories this time." And for the first time in her life she truly felt like a storyteller. Later that week, Ava stood in a classroom at a community journalism workshop. Young writers, eager, curious, nervous, filled the seats. She smiled as she placed a worn notebook replica on the table. "This belonged to my father," she began. "And it taught me one thing. Stories can be dangerous, but they can also be redemptive." Hands raised. Questions followed. Ava answered each one with clarity, grace, and fire. She spoke of truth, of fear, of the cost of silence, and the necessity of breaking it. A teenage girl lingered after class. "Do you think I could write something that matters?" she asked. Ava knelt to her level. "You already are," she said. "You just need to believe it." The girl smiled, a spark lighting in her eyes. And Ava saw herself, young, silenced, but now, heard through others. Ava wandered the city that afternoon, not with a destination, but with a new rhythm in her step. She passed the places she once feared: City Hall, the street corner, the archive building. But now, each one felt lighter, like old wounds beginning to heal. On a bench near the park, she sat and watched families walk by, couples laugh, joggers pass. The world was ordinary again, but she no longer felt small within it. A small boy dropped a toy near her foot. She bent to pick it up, handing it to him with a smile. "Thanks, lady," he said, then ran off. That one word echoed in her head. Lady. Not ghost, not orphan, not mystery. Just a person. Whole. Well. She smiled, eyes glistening, realizing that the city hadn't changed. She had. And that was more than enough. As twilight settled, Ava walked the long way home, past the mural, one more time. It was now lit by soft ground lights, casting Jonas' painted face in gentle glow. Someone had added flowers and a small candle at the base. She knelt beside it, brushing dust from the plaque. "Hey," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore." She sat there for a while, watching the sky deepen into indigo. Cars passed. Life continued. But the mural stood timeless, a testament carved in paint. She stood finally, nodding once toward her father's painted eyes. "You waited a long time," she said. "But we made it." As she walked away, the lights blinked behind her. In that moment, the city didn't feel heavy or haunted. It felt like home. For her. For him. For the truth that had finally come to light. Ava walked up the stairs to her apartment, the weight she had once carried now gone. She paused before unlocking the door, and turned to glance at the city once more. The skyline sparkled, not with power, but with presence. Inside, her space was quiet, still. She set down her bag and opened the balcony door. The breeze caught her hair, and she stepped out into the night. Stars peeked through the city haze. She whispered, "I see you, not to the sky, but to the man who'd once waited on the corner, the girl she used to be, and the story that refused to die." The camera pulls back, Ava standing alone on the balcony, framed by glass, quiet, calm, whole. The screen fades to black. Her voice echoes one last time. Some stories never end. They just finally get told.